Welcome back to Money Game, where smart money meets crypto innovation. Today, we've got a wild one for you. We're talking about how one of Wall Street's biggest, loudest crypto haters might just be, well, a huge investor now.
Okay, let's rewind the clock a bit. The year is 2017, and you have Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JPMorgan, one of the most powerful men in finance, on record saying Bitcoin is a fraud. Not just that he didn't like it or that he was cautious, he called it a straight-up fraud. Pretty harsh, right? Well, you're going to want to keep that quote in the back of your mind because what comes next is something else.
Okay, now look at this. $102.5 million. Just let that sink in for a second. Now, what if I told you that that number represents JP Morgan's current position on crypto? Yeah. Talk about a complete 180 from it. It's a fraud, huh?
And there it is. That's exactly where that money is going. It's the size of JP Morgan's brand new bet on a company that does one thing and one thing only. It buys and holds Ethereum. So, how in the world do you go from calling crypto a fraud to dropping over $100 million on it? That's the story we're going to unpack right now.
All right, first things first. We need to talk about Wall Street's massive new bet on ETH.
So let's get into the nitty-gritty. The filings dropped on November 7th, 2025, and here's the headline. JPMorgan Chase snatched up almost 2 million shares of a company called BitMine. That position, it's worth about $102.5 million. This means JPM now has a 9-figure stake in a company that's basically dedicated to hoarding as much Ethereum as it possibly can.
So let's dig into this $100 million deal. So who is this company, BitMine? Well, they made a really interesting move. They pivoted their whole business model to become what's known as an Ethereum Treasury. What does that mean? It's simple, really. Instead of keeping cash reserves, their primary asset, their main holding, is Ethereum. They just accumulate it and hold it. And they're not just dabbling. They're the biggest corporate ETH holder out there, sitting on a massive 3.4 million tokens. But here's the thing. It's not just JP Morgan. That's what makes this so compelling. Look at the other names on this list. You've got ARK Invest, Cathie Wood's fund, actively buying shares. You've got Vanguard, one of the biggest investment companies on the planet, as a top holder. This isn't just one bank making a bold move. It's a trend. You're seeing some of the biggest players in finance, the smart money, all piling into the same trade. So this really begs the question, how did JP Morgan go from skeptic to strategist? It's quite a transformation. This timeline really lays it all out. You start back in 2017 with Jamie Dimon's fraud comment and the bank literally banning crypto purchases. Fast forward just 2 years to 2019, and they quietly launched their own JPM coin for internal stuff. Then, in 2024, they start holding Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs for their clients. A little later, in mid-2025, they're accepting those same ETFs as collateral for loans. You see the pattern? It's a slow, calculated warming up process that culminates in this $100 million investment. This wasn't a flip-flop. It was a strategy unfolding in slow motion. Okay, so what does this all mean for the bigger picture? Well, you can think of it as the ultimate institutional seal of approval.
And here's the best way to think about it. If you're familiar with MicroStrategy and how they went all in on Bitcoin for their corporate treasury, well, BitMine is essentially running the exact same playbook, but for Ethereum. They're positioning themselves to be the MicroStrategy for ETH. And that explains JPM's move perfectly. They're not buying the crypto directly. They're buying a piece of the company that's vacuuming it all up.
So let's wrap our heads around why this is such a big deal. First, it's massive validation for Ethereum. It's JP Morgan saying, yep, this is a real asset. Second, it tells us how big money wants to get into crypto, not by holding the coins themselves, but by buying shares in a regulated company that holds the coins. It's so much cleaner for them. Third, this could be a major catalyst. When JPM makes a move, other funds notice. You could see a wave of copycat investments, classic FOMO. And finally, this really cements Ethereum's place as a legitimate corporate treasury asset, not just some speculative token.
So where do we go from here? What happens next?
Well, if you ask the Wall Street analysts, the future looks pretty bright for BitMine. Right now, the stock's around $38. But look at these price targets. CoinCodex is calling for $52, and B. Riley, they're way more bullish, slapping an $85 target on it. We're talking about a serious potential upside here, all driven by this new institutional interest. And really, that's the bottom line. This one move from JP Morgan has totally changed the narrative for BitMine. It's gone from being this kind of speculative dip buy for crypto fans to a full-blown institutional darling. Which, of course, leaves us with the big one, the $1 million, or I guess $100 million question.
with the ETFs in place and now massive direct investments like this. Is this it? Is this the tipping point we've all been waiting for? The moment Wall Street finally dives headfirst into crypto? We'll have to wait and see. Stay tuned. The next update could change the game.